Back in 2019, we were kind of almost at the cusp of the COVID pandemic. We didn't know it, but something was going on where people started to do this, what they call the Marie Kondo craze, the Kondo craze. You guys remember this? It's been a few years, okay? This young Japanese lady she actually had a show on Netflix called Tidying Up. And she was teaching people how to organize, how to declutter, how to make their lives free and joyful again, because it was, and it still is, a real issue. People are overwhelmed with stuff in their lives, stuff in their homes, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, she's like not only has a show, she's giving all these instructions of how to tidy up, very clear descriptions of what do you do when you want to figure out if this is worth keeping or not. You guys remember this? Does it spark a joy? Right? That's my Marie Kondo voice, right? Spark a joy? Yes? No. And basically, if it does, you keep it. If it doesn't, you donate it, right? Discard everything that does not spark joy. Well, this is Marie Kondo craze is still going on. She's writing books. She's helping people beyond simply just stuff at the home, your email inbox, your kind of like your work life. But the theme here is declutter. Declutter. In fact, we need it. Well, it must have struck a chord because they called it the Marie Kondo effect. Soon, the thrift stores and the community agencies that received donations, they were overwhelmed. They had to tell people, don't bring us your stuff. It's too much. We have nowhere to put it, right? That's changed since then. But this got so crazy that people were actually, drinking the Kool-Aid. They're starting to declutter like crazy, believing that if you declutter, you can breathe. Your life will be peaceful and joyful because you're just overwhelmed, right? It's kind of funny. But 3 years later, after she had some extra kids, she was like, I gotta admit, it's hard keeping tidy, right? Even Marie Kondo, her home was messy. It tells you how powerful this wave of stuff that we're living in the midst of. There were ladies who were so bitter. It's like, I tried to tidy up and I had 3 kids and she's telling me that I can be happy if I just figure out what sparks joy and not. And there was an anti-Marie Kondo effect for a little while, right? But still, even the decluttering queen could not keep her home tidy. That tells you something, right? Because this is what we live in. This is life for many of us. Okay, don't be ashamed. We're all there, okay? We're all there, right? Our bedrooms are cluttered. Our workspaces are cluttered, right? Our desktop, sometimes I get a peek at some of our desktops, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do you live in that environment? It's crazy. It's so cluttered. Our minds are cluttered with stuff, not just things, all kinds of thoughts, anxiety, concerns, because there's a reason. There is just too much going on. Yes? Yes? Too much, right? You go to Starbucks, who their business models will make it any way you want. They overwhelm themselves. There's 17,000 ways to customize a drink. Can you imagine that? There are 17,000 ways if you want to drink at Starbucks, right? I mean, this is an example. Like, if you're a barista, how do you make this, right? And they're trying to efficientize, and we can't. There's just too much, too many options, too much stuff. Right? You go to a grocery store and it's like, this is the olive oil, and there's like 15, 20 different olive oils from different regions with stuff, and you're doing like consumer research on the fly for every single item you're buying, right? There were stories actually of those coming from Russia after the wall fell and the communism fell, and they were coming here, and this is not even now. Now is worse, but back then, they would see the wall of items of cereal, and they would sit there and start crying. They're paralyzed. They don't know what to do because every single purchase is just too much. They only have a choice of 1 or 2. Now they got to decide between like 15 to 20, and that's not just cereal, it's everything. Yeah? Anybody heard a thing called decision fatigue? Okay, you know what that is? Because on average, we may have to make 35,000 decisions a day. Day after. That's if you're a normal person. If you're like a heavily engaged person, whether it's at work or other kinds of things, that goes up. This is average. There are people who are making 100,000 decisions a day. You know how exhausting that gets, right? And there's no end. It's just too much. And so that decision fatigue starts to affect us, not only in our work and our productivity, it affects our soul. We're not built for this. And so the response has been not only Marie Kondo, minimalism, other kinds of ways of saying, this is not what we were built to be. This is not how we're supposed to live. And this word has been popped up, simplicity. How beautiful is that? To live a simple, clean, purposeful life. Less is more or less, right? Well, that's actually what I'm talking about today. The sermon is titled Uncluttered. That a person in Christ, that a people who know and love Christ and follow in Christ, we have the freedom to practice a life that is uncluttered. We're going to have hearts that are uncluttered by God's presence, minds that are freed from the clutter, and a lifestyle, a practical lifestyle, if we follow Christ, that allows us, in the midst of all of this, which is too much, to have focus, to have freedom and joy. Because this practice of simplicity is probably one of the most, I think, relevant spiritual disciplines that the church has practiced throughout the centuries. Most relevant now than ever before. In fact, I don't know how to be a Christian without doing this, honestly. I don't know how to be an effective, thriving, joyful, purposeful Christian without simplicity, because there's just too much. When we were doing our Lent series about active renewal, I said, I wish I had more options, more chances to add to this series, because this one, simplicity, is a big one. How do we engage God and practice this in such a way to allow His Spirit to renew us? And I think simplicity is a big part of that. So we're going to look at a couple of verses today. Focus on where is this in the Scriptures, number one, right? How does the Scriptures prompt us to live a life of simplicity? How does this work? And then ask ourselves, okay, how do we do it? What are some practical things to start trying to see our lives through the lens of a biblical practice of simplicity? The verses that were read for us is from Sermon on the Mount by Jesus. These are red letter texts. This is Jesus talking from chapter 6, 19 through 20 and 21, and then also from verse 33. But Jesus is saying, warning a people back then who didn't have all this stuff. So how much more true is it of us now? Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but instead lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For, and this is the principle here, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What you really value, and you see it by what you pursue, what you invest in, what takes up real estate in your mind, in your heart, and in your wallet, and in other ways, that is what you really value, okay? Where your treasure is, there your heart be also. Here is the warning, don't put your treasure and stuff in this world, okay? Because even though we've got lots of stuff, it actually will not last. It will not satisfy. It will not give you the kind of life that it promises. Treasure in this world, whether it's lots of stuff or lots of something that you think is valuable, because our treasure is all different to different people, right? My treasure sometimes is to my wife trash. She's like, "What? Why is this so important?" It's like, well, I go hiking. It's going to save my life. It's like, oh, I don't care. I don't need it. While her treasure sometimes is my trash, right? It's different, but ultimately all of us have these things, whether it's material items or something that is so valuable to us that we will center and purposely live our life for. Now, the harder part is if we've got 2 things, that's hard. If you've got 3 things, that's harder. If you've got 10 things, how do you operate in a purposeful life when you've got 10 things that your heart desires? What these verses are saying is, if you choose to live in such for treasures, plural, all the stuff, guess what? It can be robbed, it can decay, it can rust. It's not stable enough for us. It's not going to satisfy. But instead, if we and this is where that second verse that we're talking about from Matthew chapter 6:33, if we seek the kingdom, his kingdom and his righteousness first, if God becomes our treasure, this is the surprising part. All the things that we thought those treasures were going to give us, significance, security, a sense of wholeness, a sense of joy and purpose, all the things that we thought those treasures would give us, we will still get from God. But if we pursue those treasures, they will not give us. In fact, we can't guarantee. But here's the diagnostic. The very things we have, the where we invest our time, treasures, and talents, okay, that's our treasures. That's going to tell us where our hearts are. And so the simple reminder here and simple call here is, let's treasure God. It's really simple. Run after God. Let God be the focus of our life. Let his kingdom be how we operate and organize our lives. Then it becomes simpler, much simpler. I don't know how to actually have a life. Okay, and I'll explain why. Have a simple life, have even a minimalistic life without God, because we weren't built for that. Okay? That in fact, the language of us having a simple heart, a pure heart, an undivided heart that belongs to God and is operating after God, this is what we were built for. Anything, even minimalism, when it comes into that place, actually I'll explain a little, that can't satisfy our heart and our hunger for God. Minimalism says we don't need all this stuff. We like simplicity, so strip it all bare down. But if you talk to people who've done minimalism for a little while, most people, they talk about the dark side. There's a dark side of minimalism. It doesn't fully satisfy. Some people go fully extreme. They're like, I can only own 100 things. Can you imagine trying to do that? Okay. Go home and somebody says, you only get to keep 100 things. You know how obsessive you get about your 100 things? You think constantly about things, right? You're in your minimalism. What has become your obsession? Still, it's about things. Yeah. You start to be shameful or you start to be judgmental. It doesn't really free you in the way that you would think. It's short term because it's still centered around you and around things. But when you treasure God, when you find that God's love is enough, God's goodness, his grace, your relationship with him is far more, it's enough, then everything finds its place. You experience a kind of freedom that even minimalism, even tidying up with Marie Kondo cannot give you. Yeah. Because when you treasure God, when your heart is after God, after his kingdom, there's this beautiful focus. Okay? You have something to basically say, is this important to me or not? And it's not sparking joy. Okay? It's not joy. Joy itself. How do you do that? And in fact, if you ask Marie Kondo, she's like, listen to your body. Your body will get electric. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me, right? So most people have a hard time figuring it out. Does this spark joy? Does this not? Okay? Or if this sparked joy today, what if I don't spark joy tomorrow? What's going to happen then, right? It's not that simple, right? But when you're actually running after God, there is a very simple focus. It takes the too much and it brings it into clarity. It takes all the options of what you can do and brings it down to God. I just want to love you and follow you. It actually profoundly empowers us to live a life of purpose that's not built on our changing preferences, our changing moods, or what this world offers. Tomorrow a new iPhone comes out, oh, I want that. No, the purpose is internal. The purpose is anchored. It's in God. This is known. This is a human condition. Human condition that we are greedy. We want to grasp after more and more things, thinking that those things will somehow satisfy. It is not just a modern disease, okay? Richard Foster, who writes a lot of books on this, he actually calls it a beast, okay? Think about that. If you are a reader of the book of Revelation, you understand that this is about commerce, that actually the enemy is going to use things to own people, the whole 666 thing is about buying stuff. He calls it a beast. Well, this was true back in the time of Revelation, back in the time all the way through. It's a human condition. And so that's why the scriptures still are relevant, because it speaks to a human condition. Maybe us, we're heightened because we've got so many options for so many things. But look at the psalmist here. Look how he operates. Look what his prayer says. I'm asking God for one thing. Only one thing. Not riches, not lots of, people liking me, a lot of people I can influence, not this, not a big house. One thing. To live with him in his house my whole life long. I'll contemplate his beauty. I'll study at his feet. I want just to know God and love him. Be aligned with him. Be filled with him. And all these other things, they'll fall into place when I want the one thing. It's an echo you find in Luke chapter 10 when Martha is in the kitchen. And she's busy. She's stressed out. And she's like doing her thing. And there's more dimensions to this story. But in this context, she's so anxious. She's got a cluttered heart. And Jesus knows her. Here's Mary. She's sitting in front of Jesus as a disciple, just wanting to know God and know how to live. And so Jesus is actually teaching Mary, okay, in the disciples' pose to be a rabbi, ultimately. He's giving her this, the truth of the kingdom. Mary comes in and Martha comes in and says, Jesus, get her to come back over here into this cluttered kitchen and join me in my cluttered, manic experience. Okay, back then they felt that too. Okay, it's a human condition. It's worse now, I think. What does Jesus say to Martha? Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. Okay? What does he tell her? But one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away. Right? Don't put your treasure on earth that can be stolen or will rot or will rust. Okay? Put your treasures in heaven because no one can take that away from you. The one thing that the psalmist is talking about, the one thing that Jesus is inviting us to know and experience that gives us an order of how to live, that empowers our simplicity, that Mary wanted, and Martha, in her clutteredness, was trying to pull Mary into. What is that one thing? Yeah? That one thing is that God ultimately is enough. God is enough. He is enough for our deepest longings. He's enough to heal our deepest pains. He's enough to satisfy us. He's enough to make our life purposeful. Okay? He's more than enough. And when we have him, when he's at the center, all this clutteredness, the grief, the fear, the depression, the anxiety, the stress, all of this stuff goes to the wayside. They get sorted, okay? Because they don't deserve to have our attention like that, like Mary's giving Jesus. When we have an undivided heart, we find God is more than enough. In fact, we'll find more and more that this is the tool of the enemy. He wants you to get off of that perch, that position. He wants you to find that God is not enough because there's other stuff that promises it, or there's other stuff that makes you believe that he is not. If he can win by throwing stuff at you, noise, concern, if he can unseat your undivided heart and make it cluttered, then he's won. Okay? This is from Richard Foster. He writes, our adversary majors in three things. Okay? This is his main strategy. Hurry, noise, and crowds. The muchness, right? If he can engage us in the muchness and the manyness, his job is done. He will rest satisfied. Because we're so distracted, we're so caught up, we're so anxious, we're so cluttered, that we don't have that sense of life and purpose. And God's goodness and glory and what he wants to do in our lives is swallowed, surrounded and swallowed by all the 35,000 decisions a day that really don't make that much of a difference. Okay? A.W. Tozer says, and this is like 50 years ago, we Christians must simplify our lives or lose untold treasures on earth and in eternity. Okay? Hold on to that. Okay? He's actually, if you've ever read him, he tells it as it is. He's saying, if we don't learn how to simplify in this format, seeking God first, we're going to lose out. We're going to lose out. So, I just want to encourage us then. What is simplicity? Okay, how do you do some of the simplicity stuff? It's not simplistic, right? Oh, just wing it. Oh, don't do any kind of research. Don't pay attention. Just whatever sparks joy. It's so simple, right? But no, there's true simplicity deals with complexity, and on the other side has a solution. Okay, that's what true simplicity is. It's not a simple thing, all right? And so I'm going to try to give you some things to help, but ultimately, there's a lot of beautiful things written about simplicity. I'm going to give you 2 books because I have to shorten my message here. Freedom of Simplicity by Richard Foster and Abundant Simplicity by Jan Johnson. Okay, so these are 2 great resources to go to if this is interesting here, if it's striking a chord. And Richard Foster is the one who's basically reminding us that simplicity is freedom. When you are able to say, God, is this of you? Is this what you would have me to do? Is this part of my kingdom life? Is this really important? As you process this with God, there's a freedom that happens. You find that things that you thought was so important are not that important. Okay? You're given the courage and the freedom to actually let go without a lot of pain. And from that freedom, you can breathe. Your brain is not just overwhelmed. You can see. You can be present. You can love. And you can do justice. Often, most of the time, we're so busy, we're so caught up, we're so constrained, we're so cluttered, we don't have any time, any energy for love and justice. But once there's a freedom that comes from simplicity, you got energy, you got time, you see things, and you begin to move. Simplicity is something inside. You're content. Because God He's in the middle there. He rules there. You don't want for 10 million things because you got the one thing that's most important, right? You're content. Simplicity is the first cousin of a contentment. It's an inward thing that starts inside because the Holy Spirit comes and He reminds you and He empowers you to live as if and feel and respond the reality that God is enough. It's an inward reality, but it results in an outward lifestyle, okay? You can be uncluttered of mind, but if your world is completely cluttered, then your unclutteredness will get affected, okay? God will work from the inside to teach us how to make our world, our outside lifestyle, uncluttered. Both are necessary. There is an interaction here, okay? There's a beautiful interaction that it's the outside that helps us, but it's the inside that's the cause. The inner reality of simplicity, of contentment. God, you are enough. I don't need this new iPhone, right? iPhone 15, iPhone 13 is enough, yeah? Some people are going to dumb phones now. You know that? It's a thing, okay? They're so overwhelmed by their smartphone, they're choosing those dumb phones that only calls, barely texts, right? And they're happier, okay? I've done the research. They're happier, right? Tells you something. But the inner reality needs an outer expression, and the outer expression helps you keep and steward that inner reality, yeah? That's why people, like, when they got to do a big project, they'll clean up the desk, right? Because the outer unclutteredness helps them maintain the inner unclutteredness. The beautiful part is when our lifestyle continues in this simplicity and this unclutteredness, as life becomes outwardly simple, it becomes inwardly rich. Okay, this is what everybody who follows this will tell you. I have less, but I feel richer. I'm more grateful. I'm more satisfied. While people they have so much and they're so like, they have a spirit of poverty. Poverty is like, I don't have enough. And so what are they doing? They're going into debt to buy more things because they don't feel like they have enough. While the ones who don't have a lot they have a spirit of, I'm rich. It's weird, but that's the reality of God. That's the reality of simplicity. So I'm going to give you 5 things to think about and practice in terms of simplicity. Simplicity is about speech, yeah? That our very speech can be much more thoughtful and can carry more weight. We don't say it 3 million things and don't mean them all. But actually, I love this. Let what you say simply be yes or no. Okay? Yes or no. Let your yeses be yeses, your no be nos. Right? All right? Don't hedge it. Don't make all kinds of explanations. Just, yeah. Isn't it interesting? What's the second part of this? When there's no simplicity of speech. Anything else is of the devil? Okay? Isn't that interesting? Why would he say that? Because the enemy can twist and add and so something really clear. I keep my promises. I do what I say. I mean what I say, and so forth. The simplicity of speech is really powerful. Okay, frugality. Okay, don't just frugal means not only looking for a good bargain. I'm a bargain hunter. Okay, there's almost nothing I don't buy that's on sale, even at Costco. Okay, Costco is a bargain hunter's paradise. I buy stuff that's actually 97, which means it's been cut down, right? These jeans are $6.97, by the way. So that's how I live, right? But it's not about just finding the bargain. It's basically saying, hey, do I really need this, right? I have more than I need, right? I might be the most stylish person. I was going to add a comedian, Shen Long. I don't know if you know who he is. I follow comedians that crack me up. And he talks about, when you start buying your clothes at Costco, it means you've given up. I've given up. And he makes a joke like, you are now ready to start your spiritual journey. They're making fun of that, but there's something beautiful about simple, the way that you approach. You want value, but you're not just extreme couponing and having food in cluttering your basement. It's actually what you have is all you need, and there's joy there. Okay, there's a whole sermon I can preach on frugality, but I'm going to move on. Spaciousness of time. We clutter our calendars with so much that when somebody says, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Yeah, you give you 2 minutes. We're not present. We don't have that margin, okay? A margin of time to give to people, right? Anyway, I got all these illustrations, but I'll move on. Holy leisure. How we do our vacationing should be a part of our simplicity. And I know we love to go to Bali and spend $10,000 on these incredible experiences. Something that's meaningful and rich, but it's not just over the top. I remember I preached a sermon like this and said, for my culture, they would throw these huge, expensive $10,000 parties for their kids, like at age 100 days and at 1 year old, and I'm like, it's okay, you don't have to, and they were offended. Yeah, because the culture says, no, you got to show your bling. They would go into debt to do that. But maybe we can be a culture that says, we don't need that. That's not about what the life of God is about. Simplicity of appearance. And I know fashion's a beautiful thing, but you don't have to buy all this stuff just to feel like you are, relevant. In fact, there are 15 designers who always wear the same thing. Vera Wang, Giorgio Armani. Designers whose job is fashion, okay, maybe they should be called hypocrites because they sell all this crazy stuff, but when they look at the way that they live, it's so simple, sophisticated, yeah? Einstein was the first one who did this. He's so busy thinking, okay, because his mind is so focused, he doesn't want to be uncluttered, so he just wears the same suit, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right? Just has 7 suits, right? Steve Jobs did that too, by the way, through the decades. It tells you when you have purpose, when you're focused, the stuff that seems so important to everybody is not important to you. What would it look like for you to declutter your heart? What would it look like to you to declutter your mind? Declutter your closet, your desk, your desktop, around the principle of God. I'm yours. Do I really need this? Is this good? Do you want me to pursue this? I can't do everything, but I want one thing, right? To know you and serve you. So this week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send out in our Telegram channel for Little Neck just a verse on a theme, a section of the Bible on a theme. This is from Richard Foster's book, by the way. And just so that it'll help us, remind us, right? So this is Monday's simplicity as singleness of heart. And each day you'll get simplicity as trust, simplicity as obedience, generosity, simplicity. Hopefully that'll be a reminder. Don't just say that was Sunday's sermon, but spend the week decluttering. Yeah? I want to remind us, God is more than enough.